What's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing an indie spotlight. So I'm going to be talking about 3 Kickstarter campaigns that have caught my attention, as well as an indie book that I've actually had for a while, but I finally read it and I'm really excited to talk about it. So, while that title rolls, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and turn on that notification bell, and I'll be right back. The first book on the list is called Area 51, The Helix Project. This is written by Trevor Fernandez Linkowitz. The art is by Marcelo Salazar. The colors are by Marcio Luis Freire, and letters are by Taylor Esposito. This is 24 thick, premium, quality gloss pages to kick off a 6-part series. The Helix Project aspect seems to be tied to a government project to create super soldiers, but the story seems it's going to dig into the humanity of the cast, downfalls, successes, and the necessity for humans to learn and grow. This story has sci-fi, noir, coming of age, family values, government conspiracy, and espionage elements. The writer on this project, Trevor, is the host of Dark Knight Nation on YouTube. He is a comic critic and promises to deliver on everything he has learned from the breaking down and studying of the craft. Marcelo Salazar is a Brazil-based comic artist with 2 decades in the industry, and he's worked on projects with Image, Titan, and Action Labs. Marcio is a Brazil-based award-winning colorist, and Taylor Esposito is a professional letterer with experience across the board. He's worked with all the major publishers, and he even owns his own lettering studio, Ghost Glyph Studios. The book itself is being published through Pocket Watch Press. This is a publishing brand that was established by Trevor Fernandez himself, so he will be publishing this book through his own company. It's called Pocket Watch Press, Crafting the Comics of Our Time. Sounds like a great tagline. I really like what's going on here. I looked through the Kickstarter page, and there's a lot of very interesting things. Most notably, I like the idea of the government conspiracy and how we're going to explore humanity by implanting DNA. Basically, it sounds like they're implanting alien DNA that they have in Area 51 into humans so that they can, change and modify them to create these super soldiers. And so I think that's a really interesting contrast to exploring the humanity side and what it means to be human in a world where we could have alien DNA. So, I don't know a lot about this project beyond that. I went through the Kickstarter, and I would implore you to go and do so much more research. Overall, this project looks really fun. It looks like something worth kickstarting, worth investing in. But there's a lot more on this page if you have any questions. So look for that on Kickstarter. That is Area 51, The Helix Project. Tales from the Quarantine. I'm sorry, I felt like I had to say that because the title alone, the book design, it looks just like something you would see out of 1950s sci-fi. And that's kind of what caught my eye here. This is Welcome to the Quarantine. And it is a anthology book. It's 400 creatives from 60 different countries, all doing 1-page stories in one single book. The editors on this are Fraser Brown and Nicola Love. And what they have done is they have collected 1-page stories done by writers and artists from around the world that tell the story, that are reflective of being in quarantine. So, let me give you a little background from the Kickstarter itself here. Welcome to the Quarantine. A space between space, a place where time has no meaning and meaning has no purpose. A place filled with nothing and everything. Where people hope, aspire, and wish to dream. Everybody has a tale to tell. These are theirs. So this book explores the very concept of quarantine in 1-page multi-genre tales of isolation, introspection, fantasy, and real-life vignettes with humor, passion, and raw skill. Tales from the Quarantine will never be released outside of this campaign. It exists as a creative reflection of a unique time in history. The beautiful design art is what caught my eye in the first place. I love the blank white look with the logo crossing itself. It just looks like something you would see out of The Outer Limits, or I think before that it was Twilight Zone. So it just seems like something in that realm where you would see this absent white space and something crazy just kind of coming out of it. And so I think that title is very reflective of probably what this is, what I would expect this to be. Out of all of those artists, that's 400 creative people, over 100 of them were Eisner, Hugo, Emmy, and Ringo nominees or winners. These one-page standalone stories will move you, delight you, and possibly frighten you. Each contributor used the starting point, quarantine and isolation, to bring their cross-genre stories to life. This is a record of history, in the moment, of what it was really like and how we all felt. That's kind of what caught my attention on this Kickstarter in particular, is it almost reminds me of something like, I hate to bring this comparison because it's not the same level, but something like Anne Frank's diary, where she was writing this diary not intentionally to be published in the future, but she was just recording what was happening. And I feel like this could kind of bring that same vibe to it, where these creators have put together stories, even if it's just one page, it's a one-page story that exists within a moment. If you remember back to the beginning of quarantine, things were very different from where they are now, especially like here in Texas and stuff. But with the early days of quarantine and lockdown, everybody was so isolated. It was a very different point in our history. It was a very different time that probably nobody else on this planet can really relate to, other than the people that are living now. So I think that's really interesting. I think it'll bring forth a vibe and of isolation, quarantine, and what we were all feeling in that moment. And I'm glad to see that they're only publishing this one time within the realms of this Kickstarter, because like I said, I think it's living in a moment, and I think this book is going to encapsulate that, and I would hate to see it get watered down by being released for years and years and years to come. So this is a really interesting project. It caught my eye. I went through a lot of it in the videos and photos that are popping up here, but there's still plenty more on the Kickstarter page itself to look for, so please go check that out and back it if it sounds interesting to you, because like I said, this is a one-time opportunity. Apex, Cybernetic Samurai Owl. This is a cybernetic owl created as a weapon. He breaks free from his creators, learns the ways of the samurai, and becomes a hero in the distant future of Japan. That is basically the summary of the first issue here. So in number 2, we're going to move on and develop and grow that character through 24 pages of comic book adventure, and it picks up right where the first issue left off. If you want to add a copy of issue 1 onto any tier, just add $5 to your pledge and send a private message to Kenny that you want one, and he'll add it to your order. There's this awesome alternative version, almost like how they did Logan in black and white with the full release and everything. This is a kind of a manga, it's I guess a homage to traditional 70s samurai Japanese cinema. And so what he did is not only did he strip the color out of each panel, but he went back and applied like a grainy film texture to it, it looks like. So you get that old school Japanese cinema vibe from it. I think it's also been flipped, so it's read in a more manga style. And so this is a really cool way to offer something extra. There's a lot of different tiers offered on the Kickstarter here. So I really suggest you go check that out, because there's not only the regular covers, there's also some variant covers. There's this alternative version. You can pick that up by itself or in a bundle. There's a lot of options with this Kickstarter, and there's so many different things you could grab. Most notably, you can get copies of the first and second book. with a single pledge in this Kickstarter campaign. So that's really cool because that gives you not only the opportunity to read what's current, you can also get caught up. So I highly suggest you go through this Kickstarter campaign. I barely scratched the surface. There's so many different options and arrangements and opportunities there to be as much part of this as you would like to be. So again, check this out on Kickstarter. Go through the full Kickstarter page. I've tried to show quite a bit, but there's still so much more here. So this is Apex Cybernetic Samurai Owl #2. That's from Kenny Aiken. And Justin Birch of Two Brothers Comics is doing the letters on that. So obviously I suggest checking that out as well. One of my favorite comic book series is Skies of Fire from Mythopia Comics. They have this second series, also written by Ray Chow, that it's called Glow. And this is a story about a brother and sister in kind of a fantasy land, but with a sci-fi kind of bend to it. So what you have is two characters, Cassie and Koken. They live in this world where there's this substance called glow, and I kind of think of it as like an energy source, or even say like electricity. It looks like a darker blue version of water, basically, and it seems to almost just like float in the air around these towers. So the main characters that we're introduced to at the beginning of the first story here is Cassie and Koken. Cassie is she's fiercely independent. She carries a rifle, and she also seems to be the type. While she is independent, she also believes, don't bite the hand that feeds you, and so that's kind of her position in the beginning of this story. Whereas Koken is very much like a technophile, and there's this substance called glow that's a strange energy source. There's also these great looking runes, and they all seem to tie together as the story progresses here. But in the end, what I want to point out is that the glow and the runes almost seem like magic, but the way that Koken and another one of these characters, Rudy, harness and use this comes off in a very sci-fi way. And so it's a really cool blending of the genres. This is definitely like a sci-fi fantasy epic. And it has world development and rules that, feel very fantasy, but there's also, again, like this sci-fi tech element to everything as we get a little farther in here. Pretty much after all of this mini adventure, I guess you could call it the cold open with the title sequence, from there we see Cassie and Koken enter Shaddai. And Shaddai is basically a city in a village, or I'm sorry, a city in a valley. And it's like a round valley. There's a river on one side. They give you a great map of it, which should be popping up here. And it's a really cool little town. I can't say that I 100% knew exactly where I was at all times, but the more that you read, the more you understand the lay of the land, and it becomes pretty easy to kind of identify where within the city they're at. And so they go into Shaddai, and this is where we meet some of the other background characters here. Kelborn is, he's almost like a father. In fact, I would say Koken kind of rebels against him and doesn't want to accept that he's their like adopted father. But Cassie seems okay with that up to a certain point. But all in all, the first page where you meet Kelburn, you kind of realize this is a very complicated family situation. And honestly, in this first issue, they don't resolve exactly what the whole backstory is there. But there's definitely a sense of tension, and I'm excited to learn more about that down the road. You also have this character named Rudy, who I would describe as almost a Doc Brown type. She seems very manic and very chaotic, and very into what's going on and what she's doing. And she's an inventor of sorts with these runes and everything. And Koken very much looks up to Rudy. So that's an interesting relationship there. And so as they're walking through the city this first time, they're on their way to take care of some things. This is where it almost reminds me of Final Fantasy also. you kind of have like this future sci-fi steampunk um, fantasy past kind of thing going on. And so they come back into the city, and it's almost like Final Fantasy in the game, where you would go into the town and like sell off all your wares and trades and everything. So they kind of do this as they come into the city, and that's how you're meeting a lot of the characters and stuff. One of the standouts there is a street performer who is introduced as Myra the Witch. And what's really interesting with this character is that as a witch, she's able to use magic and stuff. Like the runes come out of thin air. And this is very concerning to Koken, because he's saying, you know, like, there's no runes here. Where is this coming from? This, that, and the other. So he's very interested in what she's doing, and that's kind of where we get the witch term from, I think, is that she's able to use the runes and the magic in some other way. So I'm interested to find out more about that. And that's kind of what's really cool at the end of this book, is that you find out that the reason that they've never met this witch before, Myra the Witch, is because she's in town by request of Kelburn. And he wants her there to observe Koken, because they think that Koken has some kind of like special aptitude that, you know, he could be good for the future of the races and everything like that. So basically she's there to observe him, make sure he is as talented as she hears, and then she wants to take him off to like a special school or something to try and teach him to be better and utilize his special aptitude in the best possible way. I guess maximize his potential. So that's kind of the, I guess that's the conflict you're going into the second issue with. There are 4 issues of this story. I read all 4 of them. I sat down and read them all for the first time, even though I've had them for at least months. I finally sat down and read through them all, and it was a really great read. I really enjoyed it. I'm not a big fantasy guy, but whenever you do like fantasy sci-fi and the way that this blends the two together, it's really exciting. I really enjoyed what I read, but I'm kind of rambling at this point. The other big thing I want to point out about this is it definitely feels like a fantasy world from the beginning, where you get the map of Shaddai, all the way to the end, where you get these bonus pages at the end of Koken's diary. And this is where he kind of like lays out in details what the structure of these towers is, you know, how they're arranged and what it could possibly mean. The language and the runes and everything, that's fully developed. They did bring in a linguist to create an entire original language for this series. And it definitely stands out, because you feel the difference between the world and characters we're seeing versus like the old world and stuff. I can't wait to see what happens beyond the 4th issue. What I can tell you as an audience, because I don't want to ruin it, is that in issue 2, there's another pretty important central character introduced. In 3, you kind of get like some new villains and a nice turn. And then in the 4th issue, the whole game is kind of changing at this point. And it's really fun. It's really interesting. I really enjoyed this series. I can't suggest it enough. I will be putting the link for their website. There's some footage of me going through and showing you where on their website you can even purchase it. The digital copies are $3 a piece, I believe. Physical copies, I think, are $8. I don't know how the shipping works out on that. So what I would suggest is go grab that first book, the one that I just talked about here. Go grab number 1, $3 for the digital copy. If you love it, go back and order the rest. But $3 is nothing. It takes seconds to download, and you can be reading. This is a great series. It comes from Mythopia, and it's called Glow. Since this is my indie spotlight video, and I believe so much and wholeheartedly in Kickstarter and the foundation that can create, the platform that it is, and the way that it allows creators to interact with you know, their fans and their creations, I really like the platform, and I really like what they're doing. I've never used Indiegogo, so I can't speak too much on that. But one thing that really stands out to me on Kickstarter is the way that it creates this community, because everybody's working toward the same goal. It all starts out with, we need to make sure there's enough money here to get the product that we want. So of course we're going to help spread the word and share it. And then even once you get there, it becomes this game of like trying to unlock these stretch goals, because everybody as a whole is able to move that needle. It creates this really fun and interesting platform for unknown creators. However, over the past like week and a half, there has been so much controversy around what's going on with Kickstarter, and so I guess I want to throw my towel in on that a little bit. I will preface this with this is mostly my thoughts, but I've also listened and talked with David Pepos a little bit, who is a creator, about what he thinks about things. And while our opinions align a bit, I will say there's probably impact on what I'm going to say here. But my thoughts on Kickstarter are that this is a great platform for launching your own brand, your own content. And I think it's also a great place for creators to be able to do something untethered. For instance, Cullen Bunn his output is incredible. The amount of books and things that he has and projects that he has going on can be mind-boggling at times. I'm pretty sure he has a book out every week, if not 2 books every week. I've seen weeks where he's had 4 or 5 books coming out. So the man is already like a master of his craft. He does multiple Kickstarters a year. Probably, I would say, 3 to 4 Kickstarters a year. And that doesn't feel offensive because he tends to be very open about them. He'll tell you, like, this is an idea, this is a story that I have that I understand there's no real commercial viability and it's going to appeal to me and 20 other people, but I really want to be able to put this out, so basically I'm asking for you to fund the production of the book, usually at cost, So he's not even turning a profit. These are just stories he's passionate about telling. But now you have this situation where Scott Snyder is kind of the face of a campaign right now. It's being run by him and an artist. This book is being published by Boom, but he wants to do a art-heavy version of the book that he's releasing on that they're doing this Kickstarter campaign for. And a lot of people are very upset over it. And my thoughts on that one are it doesn't feel that offensive. Yes, Scott Snyder already has a platform. They already have a publisher. But the publisher is not interested in publishing this extra version that would basically put extra money into the pocket of the artist on the book, as well as help develop more of a fandom for him. So if you're interested in that, this is a more silent version of the book, as I understand. It's a hardcover edition. There's more artwork and stuff in there. It's all geared toward people that are more interested in the art than the story. But I guess because Scott Snyder is so big and his name is attached to the project, this really blew up. I kind of wish they wouldn't do it this way. I think Scott Snyder could just like put this on a website somewhere and sell it through a store and people would flock to it. So it does feel a little wrong that they're doing a Kickstarter for this, but that's not the most outrageous thing that's happened in the last like week and a half, in my opinion. I think Keanu Reeves' book, this Berserker book, and I don't want to call it a Keanu Reeves book because I don't think he has as much to do with a lot of this as probably other business-minded people are. But he has this book that's coming out. Boom has agreed to publish it. It's starring him. It looks just like him. It's supposedly for a movie or something that he has in the works. He's trying to build out that world. From the creator perspective, I really like where this is because they're trying to maximize media and different mediums to help build and grow this story. I totally respect that. I think that's awesome because it also means the success of one thing can float the success of another. So I think that's a really cool aspect to this. But what you have is a book that has already got a publisher. It's already going to be published. It's already going to be distributed. It's already going to be sold to the public. And now they're opening this Kickstarter that says if enough people buy this, then we'll go ahead and release these versions from Kickstarter. That undermines the business of the publisher they're signed with. So I don't really understand who signed off on that part of it. I think this is a bad idea from a business perspective because I don't understand how the money is going to flow like that. On the other side of that coin, though, you do have the reality that this project and even Scott Snyder's project, these are big enough to bring a lot of eyes to Kickstarter. And so the reality there is you have to look at this is going to help grow the platform so that there are more people that are getting information and may potentially see your project and back it, you know. David Pepos has talked about how because they launched at the same time as I think Scott Snyder's project or even Berserker, but either way, both of those projects help push a ton of eyeballs to the platform itself. And David Pepos says like he benefited from that. More eyeballs meant more people were finding out and interested in the OZ. So I think he understands, you know, like in the short term, this is good. Like this has brought more attention to the platform. There's more people coming to the platform. But I think the long term side of that is that people are going to start to lose faith in the industry and the personality that is within a Kickstarter campaign, and it starts to move more in a commercial direction once you have high profile people like this interested. I think this proves the viability of a Kickstarter campaign and what it can do. At the same time, I'm afraid that the effect of that is going to turn into just another commercial product that loses a lot of that like homegrown, down-to-earth personality that's within a Kickstarter campaign. So, I'm really interested in what other people have to say about this. Should we be welcoming big books like Keanu Reeves and creators like Scott Snyder onto the platform to sell their products as well? Or should we maintain that indie feel and down-to-earth grassroots vibe? So, you tell me what you think about it. I think this is a big topic that needs to be discussed, so let me know.